Good afternoon, morning, friends. Great to see everyone here. This webinar, new masterclass is jam-packed today, which I'm happy to see you guys, but also I'm a little bit sad because I know what an issue staffing is and what a struggle it is today to find the right people, get them onboarded correctly, motivate them and keep them, and do it in a cost-effective manner. So this year's masterclass is completely dedicated to issues and creative suggestions around that. We're going to keep it very positive. We're going to find creative solutions. It's a tough job out there, and our job as leaders to give people what they need to be successful. So that's the mission. There will be a class each month. The January class was on, also like to apologize for anybody whose schedule got changed because I was sick about 10 days ago. I'd gotten a little too cocky about, I hadn't even had the sniffles this year, and you know, don't do that. Never say it didn't happen. So sorry about that. January, we did a kickoff, as we do the first of every year, on the state of the industry, everything that we see going on in the industry from an operational and transactional standpoint, and we'll give you a little synopsis of that during this masterclass. And then today we're going to kick off with the financial picture of staffing. Every month after this, we'll have a different speaker who will share a creative, awesome idea about staff management and leadership. We dedicated an entire day to staff and strategies at our recent Shift conference that was held in San Diego last month, our very first conference, and it went really well, and I think served people who were there pretty well. So thank you for showing up. We're happy that you're here. A quick introduction. We've got some new people on here. We've got 144 people and people logging in as we speak. We've got 34 states covered. I know some of you guys don't know, some of you, I know we've got a very wide range of businesses represented here. We've got some of our private equity clients. We've got some national companies. We've got some large and small regionals, and we've got some single site companies. We have religious-based organizations and Montessori and some private school as well as preschool. So thank you for all being here, and please contribute to the content here so that we can all learn from and help each other. So happy to have you here. I'm Kathy Ligon, and this is my 33rd year in the industry, and man, has a lot changing right now. So I think the last 3 years I've seen as much change as I did the 10 to 20 before that. I'm a accountant by trade, spent my first couple of years in public accounting, and so I combined that background in 18 years with growing a company from 5 to 120 sites. In the processes we developed there, both operationally and transitionally, into some financial benchmarks and methods that we found to work particularly well there, and we make it our mission to help you guys be as financially healthy as possible. The methods that we use got started in the 18 years I was with that company, but in the 15 years since, I started Hinge. Maybe you knew us formerly as Strategic Solutions Group. We launched our new brand Hinge at our conference, and we're excited about that. Look for us on our new website and on Facebook and Instagram so we can get communication out to you guys. But in the 15 years that we've been Hinge, we've developed a financial model that we call My Silent Business Partner. We train on it and help people learn how to benchmark and develop a budget and how to manage their expenses in a healthy way that doesn't, you know, it doesn't kill them to manage them that way. It actually creates more resources and makes their life much easier. Every school's a little bit different, so knowing what the average financially healthy school does is very valuable, and I think then you can develop strategies for your school. If anything I say today does not fit your model completely, please reach out. We don't, you know, we're always happy to be a resource and answer a question. Our main business is to help people grow their companies and sell their companies. So that's actually how we get paid, but we don't need to be getting paid to help you. So we would like for you to be as strong as possible. You can call me. I'll get you in touch with the right person if I'm not it. So please, you know, reach out if we can help you at all. So a couple of little housekeeping things if this is your first time on one of our master classes. We're using a new system. I'm excited about this, so let me just tell you, historically we've used PowerPoint for our presentations, which is commonly used and probably some of you guys use too. We just switched to a new resource called Prezi, P-R-E-Z-I, which is a web-based resource. So what you're seeing on your screen is new for us, but it's really cool. So I'm excited about it. But you guys are the guinea pigs. So hopefully this will go really well, but we love the new resource we have there. Over to the right-hand side of your panel bar. So you should see Hinge Masterclass and the home screen. You should see me. And over to the right of your screen, you should have a panel bar for GoToWebinar. What I'd like to point out to you there is that about near the bottom are two resources. One is a handout that will mirror these, they're not slides anymore, but bubbles, I'll call them. So you can keep that and print it out. Also, the entire webinar will be available on our website within a couple of days. You can watch it again if you like. You can ask questions during this masterclass. I always try to leave 15 or 20 minutes at the end for questions. So you'll notice just above the handouts, there's a question panel. Please feel free to ask a question. We'll take those, and if we don't get to them all, which might happen with this number of people, we will certainly answer those on our Facebook page or in a blast back out to you guys, or help you individually if you need us to. The master classes, we're in our 4th year of master classes. 4 years ago, we got these classes started, and our first year was on everything operational: how to set tuition rates, how to control your accounts receivable. And you can go to our website and get any of those. So those were very popular. And again, they sort of follow where people's struggles are. The second year was all related to valuation. What's your business worth? What's your real estate worth? And then last year we focused on real estate itself. How can I use my real estate to grow? How is this an asset? Do I want to lease or own? We had some dynamic guest speakers, so that was great. And of course, this year, like I said, is all related to staff from both a financial and an operational, and a very creative approach. So let's get going on the agenda here. So first of all, here's what we'd like to focus on today. I always like to start every presentation we have with what I call a state of the industry. And it's really just an umbrella look at what's going on in the industry. You guys probably know, like I do, there are a few places to go to know those things. And we're not smarter than anybody else. It's just that we have a unique position in the industry where we touch a lot of different types of stakeholders and a lot of different types of businesses. So we'd just like to tell you what we hear, and love to know from you guys what you hear. We're going to talk about what we believe in a financially healthy school, the numbers should look like. So in staff control, we're going to talk about, if that's the case, how in the world do I pull that off? What are the best strategies for that? And then we'll talk about where we're going with that and getting creative in our future master classes. So that's the plan. First of all, a couple of news items about the company. Here are some of the events we have coming up that you can plug into if you need a deeper dive into any of these concepts than what we can do in 40 minutes of content. So we'd love to have you. We started this year doing our own one-day events we call Thrive Workshops. We did our first one in November in Nashville. We limit those to 100 guests, and we quickly maxed out, which just said to me that this is a big need. And we broke down our financial model, and we worked it with small groups, and we helped each person create a benchmark for their school before they left there that day. And then we did a lot of follow-up with them to help them with some strategies to help in certain areas that they struggled with. Our next Thrive workshop has just been scheduled. It will be in September in Boston. I believe that's September 14th. And so you will get some information about that, and we would love to have you there if a deeper dive in a benchmark for your own school is something that would be useful to you. We have a lot of fun too, so we do some fun things, so we'd love to have you there. Also this year, we decided to hold our own 2.5 day, actually it morphed into 3-day conference because we kept adding fun events in. And what we did at our Shift conference in San Diego a couple of weeks ago was pull in speakers. We ended up with 34 speakers between panelists and speakers from very different areas of the industry with nothing but business and financial content. And again, we know, like you guys probably do, that it's tough to find a place to go where you just get that information, but we had so much fun. It was wonderful, and we have next year planned in Austin at the Kimpton downtown, and it is February 20th through the 23rd. You see me looking over at our wonderful Carrie Ferguson for support there. So we would, you'll see some information coming out about that in a couple of months, and we would love for you to join us there. And then lastly, we will have always and will never stop speaking for other organizations. I'm leaving here later today to actually, I'm going to Florida first, but then I'm leaving there to go to Texas and speaking at the TLCCA conference this weekend. In a couple of weeks, we are also speaking at the AELL conference in Orlando, Association of Early Learning Leaders. They have a fabulous conference. Look that up. And we support a lot of our state and national organizations with webinars and speaking engagements for the benefit of their guests. So that will always happen. We hope to see you in your state. If we're not in your state, get connected, get us connected, because we don't charge to do these. We do them because we want to support the industry in its challenges with financial issues. We have a lot of people from Texas on today, so I hope you guys will be there at TLCCA this weekend. Come see me. I think I'm speaking Saturday, so we'll hope to see you there and get an opportunity to meet you. So we will continue those engagements. All right, let's jump into this thing. So let's talk about controlling your labor cost. I mentioned to you guys that one of the things that we, well, it's really the heart of everything we do, is my silent business partner. We're, at the moment, it's in Excel format, but it's written so that you can input your school's license capacity, tuition rates, and a couple other things are optional, your revenue and your rent, but it will populate and it will show you in each expense category what the average financially healthy school in the US spends. And again, this got started 25 years ago by comparing companies with each other. And I developed a model. What I found out after I laid all these companies out was that there were very few differences. If we had stable, financially healthy companies, what they spent as a percent of their revenue in different categories was very stable. Over time, so 25 years in the making, only 2 things to date have changed in that model. And these will make sense to you guys. Employee benefits have increased. Largely that was a result of affordable care, but also just competition for employees. Most people are beefing up their employee benefits. At the same time, we saw a decrease over time in marketing cost, where 25 years ago we did Yellow Pages and it was very expensive. And today marketing is much more creative and less expensive. So they almost canceled each other out, and our basic model didn't change. This year, I'm really watching 2 things. And one of those things is one of those things is, I just realized I told you guys I had a new presentation that I haven't gotten to state of the industry yet. So I'm going to back up in a second, but let me keep going with this. There are two things that we're watching really closely now for potential changes, and these have both in the last year changed drastically in the companies that we see. And also, we're privy to a lot of companies' financial statements. We get the national companies' statements because we do a lot of work with them. We get statements from franchise groups and groups that provide religious-based education, single schools that are small and different all over the country. And we don't share those, of course, they're confidential, but we track those against our benchmark to see what things are changing. And the two things I see right now, the first thing is credit card fees associated with this parent group using credit cards has just skyrocketed, but it's either zero or a big number. So either a company takes credit cards or they don't. And to the extent that they do, we've seen a pretty big increase. The second thing is what I'm calling this tsunami happening with staff costs. And what I mean by that is I believe that what you guys are having to pay for your staff right now is going up really quickly and at a rate much quicker than your tuition rates can go up. So where the basis of our training is built around 4 key components, and if you get these things right, everything else is pretty easy. If you don't get them right, really tough to do well in this industry. Those are your pricing, what you charge parents. And the second is your occupancy, or how full you are. The third is how well you control your labor cost as a % of your revenue. And the fourth is what your facility costs you. And that's a different story, but we can help people with that too. But again, 2 of these key components are what we charge parents and what we spend on staff. And I see a real shift going on here with skyrocketing staff labor cost and a limit to what you can do with your tuition rate. So I do want to say real quickly that we have recently done a webinar on creative ways to increase your revenue by also, so you can go up on tuition rates X dollars a year. We gave you some strategies if you've gotten out of whack and you need to go up more than the standard X dollars a year, but also how changes in other charges and discounts especially can really improve your financial picture more even than your tuition rate. So if you feel like that's an issue for you, go to that webinar, but also contact us because we're happy to help you. But again, a big shift now in what you guys are having to spend for staff versus how quickly you can raise your tuition rates to match that. That's the big focus here on controlling your labor costs. All right, now, so I'm going to get into the state of the industry. So sorry, I'm backtracking. I could have acted like that was an intro. It really wasn't, but I won't pretend with you guys. Okay, so we like to start again with what we hear in the industry from people that's important, who's growing, what they're doing. You guys will be right with me on some of this, and you might not see some of it, but I'd love your input. So we'll go over this pretty quickly because I want to get into the meat of the staff cost. So first of all, from an operational standpoint, occupancies or enrollment are high across the country. People are working, unemployment's low, most everybody's booming in their infants and toddlers, but most everybody's having a happy time with their revenue right now. So, again, the balance is, if you've been here long enough, the balance is parents are working. That's a great thing. That means it's harder to find staff. The flip side is if parents aren't working, you have more staff, but I'd rather have today's problem if it was me. So hopefully you're in there with me. The second thing is that people are more confident in their tuition rates than ever before. And I think they're having to be, but also when occupancies are high, people feel comfortable doing more with their tuition rates. I get a little preachy about tuition rates, so I'm gonna keep myself from going off on that tangent right now. We see federal subsidy levels are stable and rising. If you look at the Child Development Block Grant, the big three sources of money, the federal Child Development Block Grant Program for tuition, the USDA food program for food, and Head Start are the 3 main sources of federal money have never actually decreased. You will see some volatility in state match for tuition. So I know some of you guys have felt that at times and might be still. But on the federal level, those have never decreased and only increased. And there are some proposed huge increases in the Child Development Block Grant Program. So stable and increasing. We're seeing more, this is kind of exciting. We're seeing a lot of our clients collaborate with Early Head Start. Early Head Start is Head Start's counterpart to infant through 3-year-olds. They're doing programs in our client schools. They're investing in the building and equipment and playgrounds, and it's basically will contract a client to provide that class for them. So that's exciting. If you want some strategies around how to get connected to them, happy to help you with that too. A big focus on branding. It's becoming more and more important for schools who, especially schools who have been around for a while. New and shiny is booming everywhere. And by that, I mean new construction. I'll talk about that in just a second. But it makes it more and more important for schools that have been around for a while to be very intent on keeping their branding fresh and new. I feel like a facility needs to go through a complete rebranding overhaul about every 10 years. And there's a lot of cool stuff going on with that. We're seeing an increase in STEM and STEAM concepts among a lot of our clients. One of the national groups, Learning Care Group, who is La Petite, Child Time, Tutor Time, Children's Courtyard, Montessori Unlimited, Creative Kids, and now they have developed a new STEM brand called Everbrook, and they're building very quickly across the U.S., and this is appealing a lot in tech areas to families who want that concept for their children. There are a lot of people in the industry who say we've been doing this for years, we just haven't called it that. Well, call it that and communicate it to your parents. So now is the time to step up and tell parents what you're doing that's cool in your school. I think we're our own worst enemies there. Outdoor classrooms are bigger, learning classrooms outside. And I mentioned credit card fees and struggles with staff culture. In the transaction market, the franchises are still the largest growing segment of the industry. A lot of activity among the big ones, Primrose and Goddard, also Kids Are Kids and Kitty Academy and some other emerging ones. So a lot of growth there. The national companies are all on real big, fast growing sprees. You're seeing KinderCare and the Learning Care Group family building. A lot of our other multi-site clients going into new markets. We're seeing prices high, the highest we've ever seen for businesses in real estate. We think that the interest rates we expect to happen this year will probably drive real estate pricing down a bit. I don't think it'll be a train wreck, but I think for a couple more months, we've got a nice little high. And then we're seeing more options for real estate investment from some of our institutional investors that want to get into real estate in our industry. So that's what we see that's happening. Again, love to hear from you guys if you see or hear something different, because that's how we learn and share and grow. Okay, so let's dig down into these numbers now. What should the numbers be? This is probably the number one question we get from people as we talk about the model and what they should look like. So we always talk about, sorry, I think I hit the wrong button. Did I stop screen sharing for a second? Are we good? Okay, we're good. Okay. It's the number one question we get from people, and it's my belief that you need to manage your staff cost as a percent of the revenue you're bringing in. And I want to say net revenue. So these are some important concepts, not tuition rates or not tuition revenue, but tuition revenue plus any other revenue, late fees, registration fees, all of your revenue, less your discounts, will give you a net revenue. And what that says is all the money we made after discounts. And the reason I say this is I see a lot of people getting themselves in trouble, a lot of people, by over discounting. They have, and we've got some great strategies for this, but they're giving multiple child discounts too liberally. They're discounting too many staff children per teacher. they have 15 free staff children in the building. And it can cause you to make decisions that aren't solid if you're not looking at the net revenue and you're looking at the gross revenue. So be mindful that when we talk about these percentages, they're being calculated on the net revenue plus other charges minus discounts. Okay, so now I want you to manage that by a percent of that number that you're going to spend on salary. So when I give you this percent, this assumes a school that is operating independently with a market rate director and every pay that is paid. So salaries, hourly pay, vacation pay, PTO, whatever you are paying your people, these, not payroll taxes, we'll get to that in a minute. And that's another thing. People will sometimes confuse the amount of payroll taxes they pay in with the salary. So two completely different things. So just the salary amount. If you are an owner operator paying yourself something, to compare yourself to this number, you need to adjust what you're paying yourself to what you think you would have to pay a market rate director if you are acting as the director. If your salary's just in there somewhere, you're not acting as the director, just take it out. So this is an intact school with a market rate director and assistant, whatever management you have, and all of the dollars that you pay your team. So you'll notice here with this chart that I like to use an occupancy of 70% as a benchmark. So occupancy is how full you are, how well enrolled you are. And I want to make the point that I'm talking license capacity. I have a lot of conversations with people about, well, I'm licensed for 210, but I'd never put more than 180 in there, or group sizes don't match up. It's true. I mean, that's a real thing. But I want you to calculate this based on your actual license capacity. So if you're licensed for 200 and there are 150 full-time children in there, then you're 75% full. You guys know how to do the math. But at 70% occupancy is where I think most schools and in our benchmark need to be to have the resources to put back into their school. So you're not awake in the middle of the night wondering how you're going to pay people and how you're going to pay your mortgage, because you cannot serve all of these people in your care if that's the case. If that's the case and you can't figure out your financial situation, please reach out, because you cannot do the mission that you got into this for if that's your personal situation. So at 70%, I want a school to spend 45% on pay. Now, let me say there are certain parts of the country where this is easier or harder. I will say that at the end of the day, you might have to work harder to make it work, but you have to make it work, or there has to be a change in your tuition rate to make this percent stronger. So there are cases where I'll have people say, I'll give you a couple of examples. I was working with somebody in our recent Thrive class, and she was spending 68% on staff. And she was so upset, I could see, and I went over and tried to talk to her, and she said, I don't know what else to do. I am managing this. It's consuming my life. I don't know what to do about this. And I looked at her occupancy, and it was 21%. And I said, well, I'm going to make this easy for you. Don't think about your staff cost anymore, because you're probably doing pretty good to spend 68%. If you are 21% full, you're probably doing pretty well. So stop working on that. Don't be crazy about it, but stop working on that and enroll your school, because you are never going to get there until you have a certain number of children in your building. You've got to pay your management. You got to pay your lead teachers. The beauty of this is as your occupancy gets higher, you usually fill in with staff who are part-timers or their assistants. You usually have your core team in place. So my benchmark for 70% is 45%. I don't want you to go under 70%. If you've got that, you need to be working on your pricing. You need to be working on your occupancy, your marketing, what's your curriculum like. We have some affiliate resources that can help you with that. Now you'll see as you get more occupancy in your building, this gets so much easier because like I said, most of your heavyweight expenses are covered, and as your enrollment goes up, this percent can go down. So you'll see that I've graduated this from 50% staff at 50% occupancy to 42% at 90% occupancy. The truth is, when we have people close to 100% occupancy, a lot of people can get into the upper 30s. They would be in a pretty heavy tuition rate area. And honestly, some of our buyers get a little nervous at that. They ask a lot of questions. You know, they want to be sure that ratios are being followed and teachers are being paid what they should be paid. But if you want to know a benchmark, it's pretty consistent that historically this 45% has been a good number to use at a healthy occupancy. Again, I'm seeing a big struggle with that just this year. So I think stay tuned with us because I won't change my benchmark unless I see something consistently change for more than a year. It needs to normalize for me to feel like it's going to perpetuate and I need to make that change. But that's where I want you to be. So if you're struggling to be there, the things to look at are what's your pricing and what are you paying people? And in just a minute, we'll talk about some strategies to manage it on a daily basis. But that's where I want your numbers. Okay, now let's look at the total salary picture though, because it's not just salaries that you're spending in your school for your staff. Obviously, they cost you a lot more than just their salary. So here's a chart of how we benchmark our staff costs. So you'll see in this particular situation, this school makes $1.5 million annually in net revenue. And again, the net revenue is the number we want to play off of here. So when we do our benchmark, we separate it into staff costs, program costs, facility costs, and administrative costs. The reason we do that is we know individually what each line should look like. We also know what each category should look like. And it makes it very easy for us to ask you questions about numbers that we see that are missing or are outliers and why that's the case, and help you make some decisions about your school. So in this situation, we are financially healthy at 70%. We're spending 45% of the $1.5 million on our staff on our staff salary. So healthy position here. Payroll taxes are going to be they're another approximately 9.5% of the net revenue. I'm sorry, of the salaries, which make them about 4%. You can see how precise I get on my silent business partner because these numbers are so predictable. But basically, with payroll taxes, for every dollar that you spend in salaries, you pay for the benefit of that staff, half of their Social Security, all of their federal unemployment, and all of their state unemployment. And that's what the payroll tax number is, the part that you pay, not the part that you withhold for them and then send to the government, the part that you pay. So again, look out for, I see a lot of people that have an outside company produce their payroll. I'm a big fan. I do the same thing. I'm not about to do my own payroll. It's way too complicated. But when they get the report, they're sometimes confused about the breakout between salaries and payroll taxes. If you're confused, put them all together and add these numbers together. So you'll be about at 50% then. But sometimes I'll see people put too much in payroll taxes and not enough in salaries, and they think they're okay with their spending, and they're really not. Reach out to us if we can help. But if that is something you question, put them together and add these, 45% plus 4.23%. So now you're at 49.23%. So I'd rather you do it that way. You also have employee benefits in here. Those can range from just paid days off. Actually, I take that back because that is an employee benefit, but I include that in salaries. These are things you pay on behalf of your teachers. So often there's at least life insurance because that's pretty inexpensive, easy way to get some kind of benefit to your staff. More often than not now, our employers are contributing to health insurance just because it's so tough to get people in, and the contribution there is expensive but necessary. The one that I don't see that much of, and love to get an opinion from you guys, is that most people don't believe that retirement plans that they contribute to are a huge factor in whether someone comes to work for them or not. So I don't have any, words of wisdom about that other than what I hear. So you guys may be seeing that too. So I would go in that order. Also, if you can give them the opportunity to pay for some supplemental insurances, those are usually pretty popular. Move to life insurance that's pretty inexpensive, health insurance, and then possibly retirement plans. About 2% of your net revenue is what the traditional school will spend on that. Then we have staff training. We saw in 2009 and 10 when things were a struggle, we saw a real tightening of what people spent in staff training. They started to bring more resources in-house, so there was less travel and more web-based training to keep their staff in-house and to save money, basically. But there's some excellent training now online. I'm not sure it replaces going outside for certain things. We see state association training vary really widely. Some of them are fabulous. Some of them are really, I think once your staff go once, they feel like they've gotten what they need. And some states don't do anything as far as a conference goes. But get to know the resources in your area. We will have a master class just on staff training to give you some resources to look for there. And in my miscellaneous bucket, you can never replace or spend enough on those small things that you do for your staff that make them feel good about their job. It's a tough job, and recognition and small things make a big difference. So birthday cards and gifts and pizza on a tough day can go a long way. So I always want to allocate some funding to the nice things that you do for your staff. So that's the big picture of what your staff cost you. Now, if you're not there and it's not an occupancy issue, so the first thing to look at is how full am I? Because if you're not at a certain occupancy, there's little you can do really to manage this. Again, you need to focus on occupancy and building enrollment and not in managing your staff costs. But if you are pretty well enrolled, I would love to tell you guys today that I have a magic, easy answer for you to be able to manage your staff cost. But it's my belief, and if you guys find one, would you please call me up or send up a flare or something? So I will be the happiest person. You will be my hero. You'll be everyone's hero in the industry. It's my belief that we have always and continue to be pretty grassroots, hands-on, in the way we manage our staff costs every day. I think a lot of owners and directors miss that the 15 minutes that you can save at the beginning or the end of the day are huge. It sounds like 15 minutes of a $12 salary wouldn't be very much, but if you look at a couple of 15 minutes every day for a couple of teachers, it can add up really quickly. So when we see waste, and by waste I mean you're now at a ratio where one teacher is not needed and can do something else or can go home, it's not usually waste in core teaching hours. And historically it hasn't been, and I don't think it is today either in teacher pay rates. We're never going to pay them enough. We can't pay them enough for what they're worth and what they're doing. But it's not usually in those areas. It's usually in the combination times that we see the waste. So I believe you have to have a three-part process. You need a tool to make a plan. So most of you guys are using one of the center record keeping systems, and almost all of those will help you match up the parent's expected schedule with a staff schedule. So you can already see the holes in that. So we can make a plan based on what the parents said when they would be there, when they would pick up, and we can make a plan for that. So the plans, the truth is never going to match what parents said. You're going to have the flu, you're going to have ear infections, and the kids are out, and now teachers are sick, and it's a vacation time, and it's a holiday, and You know, so make a plan, set a schedule for your staff. That's number one. So you have a plan, but that can't be the end of it. Number two is what I call management by walking around. So you can't be in every room and every hallway to notice every ratio at every minute, but you need to be engaged and know what the actual patterns are that day and help people adjust their ratios and adjust their time. I'll add a note on asking people to go home because it can be tricky. I hear from people more often than not, people will say, you know, somebody can't wait to go home if it's offered. Occasionally someone will say, you know, my staff really needs their time and they don't want to go home. I think that unless your tuition rate can be set at a place where you don't have to make them go home, that it's just something you're going to have to deal with. In that case, I would err on, first of all, either taking turns, but also protect your long-term people and your core staff. So you don't want to lose those people. And then the third thing is, since you can't be everywhere in every classroom at every moment, engage your team in this process. Train your team on what the ratios are and the fact that you want to not waste resources and be a good steward of parents' money so that you have curriculum to invest and you can invest in their benefits and you can put money back in the school and you can maybe grow and create more opportunity for them. Maybe you do a second school and they have the opportunity to be the director or a regional director. So get your team engaged in this. We have a couple of people who train for us on getting buy-in from your staff because we know what they're doing. I've been in operations like you have, and you do the tour and the teachers nicely look up, but probably in their head is really another one. You know, I'm not getting anything from this and you're bringing another child in, I'm already maxed, you know how it goes. But if you get them involved in the process and the reasons this is so important, you want to, you're not doing anything wrong and you're not doing anything that's going to stress them out. You're just doing what creates a healthy situation so that you can use those resources wisely. That's my best nuts and bolts. It's never going to go away. It's like accounts receivable. You got to put a great system in. I'd love to tell you you can put the system in and it's solved. It is not. This is probably the most important thing you do every day. That's how we do it. All right. In the creative world, we're going to have a couple of speakers. We're not going to have a couple. I think we're going to have 10 more, 9 or 10 more this year. And they're going to talk to you guys about what they've found to work in their schools, what creative ways. So next month, I haven't quite pinned them down, so I won't call them out, but I have asked our first speaker to focus on, because I think he does a phenomenal job in his schools, ways to get teachers, potential teachers engaged and excited around the interview time, because I hear so much that 3 in 10 people who schedule an interview actually show up. That's crazy. But he's got some great strategies for getting them excited about even coming to the interview and then getting excited about the process. So that hopefully is coming next month. I've got people talking about where people are in the life of the team. We're going to talk about employee benefits like we mentioned. So we've got a lot of cool stuff coming up. Again, I'm not going to leave you hanging. I know that you guys know this is an issue, and I know that you're looking for solutions to it. So today we're talking about what we want the numbers to look like. I don't want to leave you out there, banging your head against the wall going, I can't get there. How do I do it? Because we want to be helping you do that. So you guys go over, if you have a question, go over to the question tab and put those in there. I see that there are a few in there already. Okay, what's the name of the webinar on raising fees? I think it was on, I think it said setting tuition rates, but please reach out if you don't see it. I think you will find it in, Yeah, we'll get back with you, but I want to tell everybody else too. 2015, I think it was on our first year. Also, there's an article in our archives on the website that I probably like to go along with that. You'll find the content to be real similar. And so, but I know who you are. If you don't find it, please reach out because there's both an article and a webinar. All right, I'm gonna pick up, I'm gonna go off screen here, pick up Carrie's computer. Okay, where do I count substitute teacher costs? In the same bucket. So the bucket that I have for salaries, that's where I want you to put everything. Not just substitutes, but sometimes people will have contracted teachers who they hire from outside. You know, maybe they work for a staffing company and they come in and work for you. So all of your pay in the same bucket. I don't want any outside unless it's you and you're not the director. Where do you place employee childcare benefit? Okay, that's a great question. So there are two ways to do this, actually. You can either, so on my model, since I'm calculating the percent on the net revenue, the childcare discount has already been factored in to calculate the percent. So I've taken the tuition revenue plus the other charges minus the discounts, which is where that goes, to get the net revenue that would then calculating the staff pay on. Another way to do that is to not show the discount there, but to put it in discount and total revenue. So you're don't have the total tuition and then the discount, or pull it out and put it as an expense in your staff cost section. That's not really my favorite. And I'll just say that because I don't know what the numbers should be. So you guys might find that to work just fine. I know with my methodology exactly where I want the numbers to be. And here's what I do. If you were to call me and say, I can't get to the number, then you and I would be digging deeper, and I know where to dig then. So if you said to me, I'm at 70% occupancy and I can't get to 45%, I mainly have two places to look. The first place to look is, what's your pricing? So what are you charging parents in a tuition rate? And I don't know how to say this other than very simply, a lot of people are giving away more service than parents are paying for. And giving away is kind of, that doesn't sound, they're providing more service than parents are paying for. And that just doesn't work. I know you want to do it. I know you want to give them everything that you can, and that's great. But you have to match up your pricing with the service that you're providing. And then the second thing to look at is always my go-to is, what are you discounting? So if that's why I like to calculate it on the net revenue, because I dig really deep into the discounts, because that's probably, along with pricing, the two things I see people make a mistake in, not a mistake, but they need help in if they're having trouble matching the revenue and the staff costs. But great question. When can we expect information for September 14th in Boston? Within probably 2 weeks. I'll check with our marketing team on that. We just secured Boston on Friday. So I know that they're getting that together. And on the new Hinge website, you'll see the opportunity for events, master classes, affiliate speaking engagements, Thrive and Shift. So you see the Thrive event will be probably launched in about 2 weeks, and then Shift will come in another couple of months because that's in February. Minimum wage has gone up in my state, and now my senior teachers want to get paid more as well. Yeah, okay. I like this question. Thank you for this question. I've been through a lot of minimum wage increases in 32 years, but I think that they are going to increase more dramatically in the near future. Here's the good news about minimum wage increases as it relates to your financial picture. In my experience, a hefty tuition rate increase when there's a minimum wage increase is perfectly acceptable to parents. Not that they aren't going to have any heartburn and maybe struggle to keep up on their tuition rate. But in my experience, because anytime you do a tuition rate increase, and you'll see this in our suggestions, you really need to communicate well to families why, first of all the great things you're doing and why you're having to do this, or maybe not you're having to do it. You should have a precedence for doing it every year, so you don't, in that case, say why you're doing it. It's just investment in the company and rising costs. My experience is that you can go way above the norm for tuition rate increases when there's a minimum wage increase. So that's the first thing. You're going to need to get your price up to match it. And we can help with our tool. You can play what if games with my silent business partner to say, if I increase the tuition rate to this, now what does my financial picture look like? Now am I in line? Now can I give these salary increases and be okay? But the second part of your question is also interesting. So now you've moved your new people up to a place where you've got seasoned people. And maybe you had to tick them up a bit, but not really where they should be now. And so minimum wage increases never just affect minimum wage people. In my experience, you've got to move almost everybody up at that point. And I think you say that to your parents in the communication. We should probably draft a communication for you guys to use as a template. If somebody sends that to me in an email, I'll work on it for you. But I think you have to say that as this minimum wage increase was implemented in our state, costs are going up everywhere. So I'm moving our new people up to minimum wage, but this also affects the teachers who have been here a long time, who I know you love and adore. Those people have to go up too. So is this causing an increase in pay across the board? I don't think you can get away from that. I don't know what your increase is, but I know in some states it's going up pretty quickly and above where a lot of seasoned teachers are anyway. And then you've got to get them there and then some. So that's a tough one, but let us know if we can play what if games for you. Are companies really paying that little for benefits, or ours are much more than that figure? Yeah, so yeah is the answer. They are, and good for you. That probably makes you much more competitive and makes your hiring practices much easier. This category has a good bit of variability where we don't see that in other categories, because again, I'll have almost zero in some smaller companies that just can't, they're in a lower tuition rate market and they just can't get there. And we'll see it just be a huge number in other companies. But typically they would be in areas of the country where the tuition rate can rise up to match that, and it's just necessary to get people. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately it's tough, and it makes it really tough for those people to hire. What is the rationale behind using license capacity instead of actual capacity? Okay, good question. Here's my rationale. I do all of my benchmarking based on license capacity, and here's why. Could you put, if you're licensed for 210 but you think your effective capacity, because of something, it's where your age groups are, group sizes or whatever, you think your effective capacity is 180, could you put 210 children in that building? The answer is yes. Would it be effective from a cost standpoint? Probably not, because you might be in a situation where you can only add 1 or 2 more children to that class and you need another teacher. Is that smart? Probably not. But with changing ratios, or with changing demand in age groups, or a change in your building, maybe you move a wall. The reason I like license capacity is I think if we start playing games with, but I can only have, I've seen too many people limit their possibilities. Maybe you guys can deal with that, and you can just know that 180 in that situation is what you're doing today, and you choose to use it that way. But I'm also using this benchmark as a way to predict your facility costs. So you're paying facility costs based on a facility that could actually hold 210. And so it goes beyond just the staff. It goes over into other benchmarks. And I think it's important to use the actual capacity of your school, the actual square footage, the amount of space you can put children in, so that we can look at that. And then you can have the conversation. It's perfectly fine not to put the license capacity in there. Rarely in my method do I see somebody get to 100% or above, and it's just for that reason. You know, they won't put a child in every single licensed space. So hopefully that answers that for you. Would you share the website we go to find the training and pre-registration? Is hingebrokers.com. So that's our new website. That's where you can go to. Please, if you haven't already registered for contact from us, we try really hard not to bombard you guys with a bunch of junk, but we do share articles and helpful information. We let you know when we're going to be speaking and when others are speaking, and we will keep you posted on master classes and other opportunities. Anyone having a problem with staff call-offs? If so, how are you managing it, and what's your method working for you? So staff call-offs, I'm assuming, is staff just not showing up or not coming in. If that's the case, I haven't heard that as much as I have heard two things: problem with them showing up for interviews, and problem with them dictating the schedule that they will work. So we have an affiliate that has a fabulous new concept in having a substitute teacher company that can not only support your own schools but other schools, and she doesn't know it yet. She's on here, and I'm going to ask her to be a speaker with me this year, so I'm excited for you guys to hear that. Because in a substitute teacher company, you can really let people work the schedules and days that they want. So that solves that issue, and then they become available for your school plus other schools. So it's a very interesting concept. If I didn't answer that, you know, what you actually intended there, let me know. So many staff having children over 90,000 in childcare discounts. Any good idea how to manage this? I do. Trying to take out discounts from parents to cover these. What is the norm? Yeah, okay, so let's talk about that real quickly. Discounts, especially as it relates to staff. So I'm seeing schools, so this is a tough one. So let me just say this, because A, I know how much trouble you guys are having finding staff, and B, I'm telling you your discounts are too much. So, you know, you have to balance this with the need to get staff. But here's some of the strategies that we are hearing recently. So a lot of schools are now limiting or not allowing discounts in infants and toddler classrooms for staff or parents, but especially for staff, because it's really tough to have a free or reduced price child in one of those classrooms when your ratio is low and you're probably already losing money in those age groups. So that's the first thing. The second strategy we see is that there's some owners who are limiting the number of children that can be discounted for a staff to 2. So once the third child's born, you know, you can go from any direction you want, but once they have a third child, they still only get 2 that are discounted. So again, those are some strategies. This is a tough one when we're talking about balancing hiring issues with staff costs and discounts. But again, discounts, I'm gonna have to do a whole strategy session just on discounts, because I'm seeing them kill people recently. We got time for 1 or 2 more, but we've got a lot. So we're gonna follow back with you guys on, we're going to follow up with you guys on the other questions. Okay, how do you count school-age children in your capacity numbers if they're part-time? Okay, good question. So there are 2 methods for there's one method for calculating occupancy. I have a method that I use in our Thrive events that is a revenue maximization. And I like it better because it accounts for things like discounts, which I've preached enough about. But let me tell you the quick way to calculate your occupancy, and it's the industry norm. It's called an FTE, a full-time equivalent calculation. So a full-time equivalent says we're going to figure out how many children are in the building if we make them all or account for them as if they were full-time. So here's an example. You're licensed for 100. You have 50 full-time students, so you count every full-time student as one. You have 50 part-time students, which are typically after-schoolers, so you count them as a half, and any other part-timer. You know, part-timer probably needs to be 2 or 3 days a week and not one, or not one half day. You know, that's kind of will skew you. But so you have 50 full-times that you count as one, 50 part-times that you count as a half. So if you count 50 part-times as a half, you have 25 full-time equivalencies there. So the 50 full-time plus the 25 full-time equivalents is 75. If you compare 75 to your 100 license capacity, you're 75% full. So that's how the industry calculates it. And when most people talk about how full they are, they will talk about it as it relates to full-time equivalents or FTEs. So hopefully, and after schoolers are a component of FTEs. Now they're full-time in the summer, you do that calculation, you can count them as a full-time child. So hopefully that makes sense. I hate that we are bumping up against time and actually even a little bit over. This was fabulous conversation. I so want to answer the rest of the questions, and we will do that and get them out to you guys. Please give me some feedback. I hope you heard me say at least one thing that you felt like you could weigh in on, or tell me a different opinion, or give me a great resource, because all I'm going to do this year is collect them, poll you guys, pull you in where I know you have expertise, and share as much as possible. And hopefully by the end of the year, we've put some strategies in place to get our financial picture stronger and easier to manage, with some creative ideas to make that work. So see you guys next month at Masterclass on April 18th. I hope to see some of you Texas friends at TLCCA this weekend, and AELL next month in Orlando. Take care, friends. Be well.